when you surround your children in what's good and beautiful, they will start to naturally
Mhm.
reject what is ugly and evil. And Shakespeare is good and beautiful. There's a lot to be said for the way he forms the moral imagination of your children because there's a moral context to everything.
Mhm.
You know, the bad guys always get it in the end. The good guys always come out shining. You know, journeys end in
Yeah.
lovers meeting. It all comes right in the end.
Welcome to the Homeschool Connections podcast. I'm your host, Kaitlin Zara, and I'm so glad you're spending some time with me today. New episodes drop every week, so make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. All right, mamas, grab your coffee, press play, and let's homeschool together. Today is a special treat for me because I've got a fellow Long Island gal on the show with me. The fantastic Mary Ellen Barrett is here to talk all about front lawn players. Mary Ellen, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. I love to talk about the front lawn players.
This is so cool. Explain to our listeners, what are the front lawn players?
The front lawn players are a group of, well, it started as six complete lunatic mothers who wanted to bring Shakespeare to the lives of their children. So we started a Shakespeare performance troupe, and we had performed over 14 plays, so 14 years of plays, just teaching the children Shakespeare and performing, and it grew and it grew and it grew. Yeah, it was crazy, and we named it that because our first few, well, all of our performances really were on people's backyard lawns and front lawns and wherever we could find space.
That sounds magical. That sounds so special. So, how did you moms come together and decide to do this? And how did you start me with the whole process of how do you plan this? How do you execute this?
Oh, well, it started, I was thinking about this. I think it was 2007. Five of those moms got
Mhm.
together and they wanted to do like a little play with their children. And I wasn't part of the group at that time.
Mhm.
And they decided on Comus, which is a play written by John Milton in the early 1600s. And it's got kind of a fairy tale feel about it. It's a fantasy play. It's very short. There's only about six or seven people in it. And so they did it on their front lawn, and it was all very ethereal and fairy wings and that kind of a thing. And so the
Yeah.
following year, starting somewhere in February, those moms wanted to do a Shakespeare play with the children, A Midsummer Night's Dream, because it had the same vibe. There's a lot of fairies and it's very ethereal and
Mhm.
all that. They needed another boy, and I had a boy who was about 10 at the time, my oldest. And so they asked me to join because, they just needed a boy. And Ryan was, he was, he had a learning disability and he had autism. And so I was like, oh, and you really
Uh-huh.
want him? And they're like, absolutely. Because he was a little silly and they wanted him to play
Mhm.
flute, which is kind of a silly part. And he loved it. So they invited us to be in it. And it was really just the most homemade thing in the world. It was, think of like nativity play costumes where it's like a sheet and you cut a hole and you sew up some sides
Mhm.
and, you wrap a dish towel around a kid's head or
Yep.
something. It was, and fairy wings. And we did it outside at my friend Alice's house. She has beautiful yard and like a woodsy setting, and we had like a pretty park
Mhm.
bench kind of a thing. And our friend Mary, who is an artist by trade, she went to school for art. She made like a fun crown for the king, and it was all very homemade, and the kids loved it. We we had kind of debated on doing like an adapted for child script, but we decided it's a short play.
Mhm.
They're capable, and they did it. They memorized their lines. They enjoyed it, and it was so wonderful. It was worth the effort. So we just kept going and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So
That's
that's how it
incredible.
started.
Listening to you right now, you've said multiple times that it was very homemade, and I'm listening to that thinking it sounds magical because I am of the generation that we love our 2-day Prime on Amazon, and certainly that has its time and its place, but I think that
Sure.
putting together the costumes and making them homemade and maybe with the help of little hands is absolutely magical, and it sounds like it was. Mary Ellen, how did you guys I know you spoke to it growing and growing. How did that happen?
Well, it happened because as the kids got older, they were more capable of deeper plays and more complicated scripts.
Mhm.
And they became such that they would ask for certain plays, and they would read the plays and want to get certain parts, and they started to get Shakespeare. They got the jokes. They would
Mm-hmm.
laugh at it. They would read the plays before we even had to, show up for rehearsals and stuff. And they were excited about it. So we started, instead of like those little sheets and things like that, we started to do more Elizabethan type costumes, which was scouring thrift stores and finding things with velvet and fur and all this kind of stuff and sewing
So
them up.
fun.
I did a bit of sewing. Everybody brought their own talents to this. So like I
Mm-hmm.
said, my friend Mary was an artist, so she and her husband's very talented with building. So she said at first, well, we need kind of a set. So he built 2 plywood kind of
Mm-hmm.
things that she painted to look like a castle in stained glass, and there was a little platform. And then she would have a vision of what costumes would be, and we would sew them up. And then the next year, she's like, well, we need more of a set and more of a set. And it grew to when we ended it, when we stopped, it was 2 stories, a big staircase, a stage, stage left, stage right, a middle entrance, curtain. And we changed it every year because after a while we stopped doing traditional kind of get-ups and started doing like say Julius Caesar was set in the Old West. So we made it a
Mm-hmm.
saloon. And then the next year, Comedy of Errors was set on the moon. So we made it a spaceship. So I didn't do any
Wow.
of it, but the talented people did that kind of thing. So as the kids grew and some of them graduated and went off, and then the younger ones got bigger, it just became this thing, and it became like our whole spring. And it was wonderful. It was just wonderful.
It sounds incredible. It sounds incredible. Now, I've got to back up. I have to ask you a question. Mom to mom, you said that the kids started to take on more and more complex or advanced Shakespeare stories, and that they would read them ahead of time, and they would understand the jokes, and they would really dig into the stories really on their own. It sounds like a lot of student led learning. How did
Mhm.
you get your children so motivated to learn Shakespeare? In my mind, I'm thinking that teaching my son Shakespeare would be a big effort. It might be exhausting. It would be really hard and tedious. How did you make Shakespeare so accessible for these young kids?
Uh, that it's easier than it sounds. I think people get intimidated by Shakespeare because the language is so different than what we
Mhm.
speak. But then when you realize how much of our language is based on things that were in Shakespearean plays, and like so many idioms
Mhm.
that we use all the time, every day, come from Shakespeare. And then I think schools, and I wasn't homeschooled. I went to a Catholic school.
Mhm.
I went to a Catholic college. I studied English literature. And I think they make the mistake of presenting Shakespeare in the written format. So here's the play, read Romeo and Juliet, which, by the way, is the
Mhm.
worst one to start with. Don't do that. Um, you need to see it. You need to hear it. You need to hear the language. So I always recommend to people just
Mhm.
find a Laurence Olivier production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Some of the Mel
Mm.
Gibson, like Mel Gibson's Hamlet, Kenneth Branagh's Henry V. These are incredibly good productions. And when you see it and hear it, you get it. And then the kids will read it and think, oh, yeah, okay, that makes total sense now, because they see the expression, they see the gesture, they see the context of the story. If you're just reading it
Mhm.
flat on the page, it's much more difficult and it's intimidating and the language feels weird. So, yeah, you see it. So we would often look for productions, and you have to be careful because some of them are weird. Um, you
Mhm.
have to be careful that it's not, interpret. We once bought tickets. This was several years ago. It was an off-Broadway production of one of the plays. I forget which one. And one of the
Mhm.
moms went the day before to see it. And it turns out it was
Yep.
in the nude. So,
I
like,
knew you were
we
going to say that. Smart
we're
moms
all
to have
calling
somebody. Yeah.
scout it out. It was just
Yes.
ridiculous. So we had to all call and get our money back. And the lady at the box
Oh.
office was like, no, I understand. You're not the only ones. you know, so you have to scout it out. But some of the older ones are
Yep.
really worth doing. So once they
I think it's a
saw it and then
great tip.
yeah, once they see it and then they get excited about it and then they can read it. Then once they're accustomed to the language and Shakespeare's style, and he does have a style, um, it becomes so much
Mhm.
easier for them. So by the time they're in high school, they're like, "Yeah, this is old hat. What do you mean?" They would joke in
I think
Shakespeare. They
that's
would
so cool.
insult each other in Shakespeare. It was funny. Yeah.
I think
It's
that's
like
really cool. I
anything,
think a lot of the times totally, a lot of the times educators, homeschooling moms, we think you have to read the book or the play first, and watching the movie or going to the play is going to be the reward at the end of all of your hard work. But I think, like you
Right.
said, the play and the movie beforehand makes it more accessible. It comes alive in a way that when you're reading it, you can, again, like you said, you have that visualization of what the costume may have looked like or what the tone of their voices sounded like when they were reading a specific part. And I think that's a great way to spark their imagination and spark their excitement for the reading that will come next.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also there's some good audiobook productions, and I
That's
know a lot of
great.
homeschool moms have audiobook, issues. Is it reading the book or is it not? But when it comes to a play,
Mhm,
hearing it, especially some of the pronunciations might be a little difficult for people. You know what?
mhm.
You read something and you pronounce it in your head and it's wrong, and then for the rest of your life you can't knock that wrong pronunciation out of your
Right.
head. Well,
Yep,
audiobooks and plays and stuff that eliminates that. So it just makes it
totally.
more accessible.
I love that. Do you think that teaching your kids Shakespeare helped them in any other area of their education, whether it be art or history? Did you see that learning Shakespeare with this group kind of spilled into, overflowed into their education in other areas? At Franciscan University in Steubenville, students live the truth of the gospel in a vibrant Catholic community that unites faith and reason in every major. 20% of Franciscan students come from a homeschool background. Plus, high school juniors and seniors can earn college credit through Franciscan's dual enrollment. Learn more at franciscan.edu.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. First of all, I think it's important that all children do some performance, a little bit of a performance, even if they're
Mhm.
a very shy child, because when you go to
Yep.
college, you're going to be expected to speak. When you go on a job interview, you're
Mhm.
going to be expected to speak. So having a little bit of
Yep.
poise in front of people is a really important life skill. And then when it came to the Shakespeare, like my daughter,
Mhm.
Kate, she went to Thomas More College of Liberal Arts, which is a great books program up in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
Her thesis, her senior thesis was on the War of the Roses, and her last play in our Shakespeare productions was Henry V, and she played Princess Catherine. And that kind of
Mhm.
inspired her love of this period in history, which led to her eventual
Mhm.
thesis. So, yeah, and
Amazing.
they became deeper readers. They became more
Mhm.
connoisseurs of what's good in literature. I
Mhm.
think, and I've said this a million times in different speeches I've given, when you surround your children in what's good and beautiful, they will start to naturally
Mhm.
reject what is ugly and evil. And Shakespeare is good and beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a, a lot to be said for the way he forms the moral imagination of your children because there's a moral context to everything.
Mhm.
The bad guys always get it in the end. The good guys always come out shining. Journey's end and
Yeah.
lovers meeting, it all comes right in the end. And I think that's something that's lacking in a lot of more modern literature. We tend to
Yep.
forget that Shakespeare had a deep moral imagination, and that's reflected in all of his work. Beauty, love, and all of these elements that are still present in every day. I mean, people are still studying Shakespeare. Every university in the world probably
Mhm.
has a Shakespeare program.
Yep.
Power, love, ambition, jealousy, all of these things are in Shakespeare. So it's not like it's irrelevant now. So I think, yes, it helped them form good
Yeah.
moral imaginations. It helped them to be able to decide what's good and what's worthy of their time and what's not.
That's beautiful. That is really, really powerful stuff. And Mary Ellen, you speak to thinking that even the shyest kid should have some kind of drama or theater experience during their education. And I agree. I think it's so great for public speaking. It's great for a number of reasons. You probably will have to get up in front of someone and speak, say at a job
Mhm.
interview, and that confidence is really important. I want to hear from you. What was different about what you guys did than what you might see in a traditional school, like a public school theater program?
Oh, we did it outside, so there were lawnmowers and airplanes, like, that made it
Mhm.
different. But, we also devoted in a high school drama production, and so many of them do such a good job, it's so much hard work. Um, but they're doing it in addition to all of the other school that they're doing it. So they're staying after school, they're working very late
Uh-huh.
nights. We did it as part of our homeschool. This was definitely Shakespeare
Yep.
is literature, and literature is part of study. So we would take off. We would start rehearsals somewhere in February, first week or so of February, and we would rehearse maybe twice a week. And you were
Mhm.
assigned your part right around Christmas. So you were expected to come knowing most of your lines. They almost never did know all of their lines, but they've read the play, they've, made some effort. And we would rehearse and
Mhm.
rehearse, and we would still be doing traditional school, but we would perform every year. Um, it, our last performances were on Memorial Day weekend, so the end of May. So we would have dress rehearsal Monday, we would perform publicly Tuesday, publicly
Mhm.
Thursday, and then we would have a Saturday or Sunday, just friends and family performance. And then we would have a big feast, a party. So for
Mhm.
the
Wow.
entire month of May, we would do no other academics other than Shakespeare, because that also coincides with like Little League, Little League playoffs
Mhm.
and dance recitals. May is
Mhm.
busy. May is crazy.
Yep.
So that was the only academics we did. And that made it different than your traditional high school performance or your grammar school performances, because we had the freedom to just, this was our homeschool. This is what we did.
Wow.
So I would start school in August to make up for it. And it was worth
Yep.
every minute of it. It was really worth every minute of it.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, this kind of took over, this was your main source of school at this time. I'm thinking how interdisciplinary everything that you've spoken about is. Someone who helps with set designing probably has to pull out a ruler and think about measuring,
Mhm.
and whoever is designing the costumes, same thing, they have to be measuring and, making those cuts and sewing just the right way, and how that's math, and how of course you were studying history in so many ways, learning these stories. You're learning language in you're doing your English. By far, you are meeting the expectation for your reading and writing, I'm sure. And how much can be accomplished, even though, like you said, you were just focusing on the play at this time. Mary Ellen, I also
Yeah,
want to hear from you. You said that you had productions that were not for family. You had actual public productions. How did you go about setting that up?
we did it in the same place. We started at my friend Alice's backyard. Like I said, she has a lovely backyard and it's woodsy. Once the set got
Mhm.
big and unmovable, we did it at our friend Mary's backyard, she lives on
Yep.
a bay here out east on Long Island. And so her
Beautiful.
husband is the one who built the set. And so it was just in their backyard. So we would go out
Mhm.
there to do it. So we would advertise through our homeschool group, and anybody who wanted to could come, and you had to bring a chair and all that kind of stuff. You could bring your snacks,
So cool.
and they would very often they would donate to us, because this got expensive after a while. So
Oh,
people would
sure.
give us a little donation, which was lovely. And then once or twice we performed at a place called Westbury Gardens, which is one of the Gold Coast mansions here on Long Island. They asked us to
Amazing.
perform in their garden, and I think we did Romeo and Juliet out there, but, I'm not really sure. Or we might have done Midsummer Night's Dream, but so people would ask us to come and perform. We did it in a library once in Bethpage, I think it was Bethpage. So people would ask us to come and perform. So we started to call ourselves professional after a while. We never actually got paid, but we did have a lot of,
Absolutely. That is
yeah, it was
incredible.
really nice. Yeah, it was it was so valuable and so much fun. It's funny, us original 6 moms just had a reunion,
Mhm.
this fall, and we got together
Oh.
and we spent a weekend together just reminiscing, and we're always gonna be close friends because of that time in our lives. We don't
Mhm.
see each other every day the way we used to, or every few days,
Mhm.
but we're still really close, and the kids are still close too. They've all gone their separate ways. Some of them
Mhm.
are married with children of their own now. One of them's a
Mhm.
professional actor. They're off, but they have that connection of this time together,
Oh.
and it was really wonderful.
Wow. It sounds like it had a profound impact on all of your children, but also on you as women, as mothers. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because we can recall all the amazing memories, our kids looking so cute in their costumes and all of that fun. But what about for you? What did this mean for you during that time?
Oh, well, like I said, I made wonderful friends, and we were together so much those years that we became such a good
Mhm.
support system for each other. We
Mhm.
would help each other with schoolwork. Like one of the actually, Homeschool Connections, one of their favorite teachers, Macbeth Durham, was an integral part of this whole
Yeah,
process from beginning to end, and her children all
so
performed in
cool.
it. And she would help tutor science and math while, during rehearsals. You weren't on stage, she would help. She
Wow.
was, yeah, I mean, she was great. She was great. She did a lot of stuff that helped us get through those years. Everybody brought their own gifts to it. So we all shared each other's experience, and we became such close friends. And watching each other's kids grow up and in and out of each other's houses, um, the connection is just, it's so incredible to me that I found this core group of people. And we were able to bring in
Mhm.
other moms here and there. We need another boy, so you bring in another mom, and they'd
Yeah.
do it for a year or two, and then they'd move on to something else. But that connection is invaluable as a mom, to have that support system. Homeschool moms, you need your
Yeah,
support, you need your buddies, you need your tribe, and I've had that here in
definitely.
Lindenhurst. I have my closest friend. She and I homeschooled together too. Now I have this other core group of friends that was just an amazing support system.
That's beautiful. You said something in the beginning that really struck me as very special. You said that at the time, maybe this little group was getting started and they called on you and they said, "We want your son to be a part of the play." And you said initially that you thought maybe he wasn't going to be the right fit, maybe based on some of his needs or his personality, that it wouldn't be the right fit. And they said, "No, he's exactly what we're looking for." Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about that and how maybe there's a mom listening thinking, "This sounds really fun. I'd love to be a part of something like this, but I don't know if my child would fit in," and speak to how it ended up being a blessing and a great fit for your son.
Oh, it was, now, you're gonna make me cry because
That's
he
okay,
was
I'll cry
very
with
much
you.
he was very much accepted, and when he was quirky, like, people on the spectrum can be quirky and weird, and
Mhm,
he had other disabilities. He had a lower intelligence, but he had a great musical
mhm,
gift. And I
mhm.
speak about him in the past tense because he died in 2009.
Mm.
So he had
I'm
this
so sorry for your
experience.
loss.
Thank you. We miss him a lot. But we had this experience of him having been part of this. And these kids
Mhm,
he had friends, like they were his buddies. They were
mhm,
close. He wasn't the weirdo, he wasn't the and sometimes he would act a little strange and they'd say, Ryan, cut it out. Like he'd listen, oh, all right, okay. You
mhm.
know, and he got to go to parties and he got to be part of things. So um that's that was probably the greatest gift of this whole group, is that they
Mm,
accept. And now one of my younger sons has similar disabilities, and he was
mhm.
given parts and things, and if he flubbed a line, who knows? The audience doesn't know it's Shakespeare, right?
Yeah,
So
yep.
it was all fine. They accepted the quirkiness, and there's so many quirky characters in Shakespeare. And the director, Kari Reese, who was a fabulous director for many years till her children graduated, and then Macbeth Durham took it over.
Mhm.
She would just say, "Yeah, all right, this part is perfect for Sean. This part is perfect for Ryan because we need a
Wow.
quirky person." And so
Yeah.
it always worked out great. I'm very
I think
grateful for the
that's so
gift of these
beautiful.
people. Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like
Don't be
such a tremendous
afraid if.
blessing.
Oh, it was. Don't be afraid if your child is different in any way and has a special needs or something. There's
Mhm,
always something they can do. And so you find the thing that they can
mhm,
do. Like often Ryan would play the guitar in between scenes of the play if he didn't
mhm.
have a speaking part. So he had a gift for music, and that's what he would do. Okay. All right. So yeah, it was your children. There's always a gift, and even if it's just standing in the background, being part of a chorus, or being an
Mhm,
extra in something, eh, and standing there, or ringing a bell, or handing somebody something in a play, they're participating, they're part of something, and
mhm,
accepted. And I think that's so valuable in a child's life when they don't feel like when they feel out of touch with everybody else,
mhm,
because of whatever's going on in their head. They're wired a
mhm,
little bit differently, so maybe they don't feel like they fit in. Well, they fit into this group. They did
mhm.
something. They're part of a group. And I think that acceptance is really important. And I think homeschoolers do that so much better than anybody else. That the gift of my
Me
child being
too.
homeschooled for the last 6 years of his life, is an incredible gift because he had all
Mhm.
of that. He was part of something.
Mm. Mary Ellen, so beautiful. I thank you so much for sharing him with all of us. I will be
Thank you.
absolutely keeping him in my prayers, but I think it is just so
Thank you.
special to have been able to share this story with our audience. I'm sure it will touch so many people who get to hear about
I hope
him.
so.
So many people.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Really, thank you.
You're
Mary Ellen,
welcome.
I also
Thank
want to
you.
talk to you. You've talked about having many children at home, and like a lot of homeschoolers who have big families, moms are always thinking about how can they manage getting to rehearsals and performances and costume making when we've got to fold the laundry and do the dishes and mop the floors. How did you find the time, the energy? Do you have any tips or strategies for us moms on how to do it all?
Oh, well, during the May, there were no floors getting mopped around here, I have to tell you. My house, at the end of Shakespeare season, it looked like I hosted a rodeo in my house. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I think this is true, though, of any of those big kind of things that people belong to. So if you're in
Yeah.
travel soccer or your kids in competition dance or something, you go through these seasons where you just have to kind of let some things go. So you catch
Yep.
up on the weekends with the laundry. Maybe you have pizza more often than you normally would, or,
Yep.
drive through on the way home, that kind of thing. And that's
Yep.
fine. It's really fine. We don't have to do it all the time. And I'm kind of
Mhm.
a control freak. My husband has other words for it, but I hate when my house is a mess. I hate when there's disorder
Uh-huh.
around, but you just have to make your peace with it. We used to have those blue IKEA bags, those big blue ones that you can buy there,
Yep.
and we would have each one for each kid, and that was all their Shakespeare stuff. It was their costumes, their
Yeah.
scripts, their all that stuff, like right down to boots and shoes and socks and hair pieces and all that kind of stuff, wigs.
Mhm.
And those things would be all over the house, and I was constantly
Yep.
saying, "Put your stuff away." It was just it was stressful, yes, but it was worth
Mhm.
it, and we made a very serious choice to have this kind of chaos for that time
Yep.
in order to do this thing. And I think whatever your thing is as a homeschool parent, or as any parent really, if you're making the choice, we're gonna devote this time to this thing, then this
Mhm.
other stuff has to go sometimes. So maybe you get your groceries delivered for a month, or you just say,
Yep.
all right, dust is now my friend, or things like
Yeah.
that. You just make your peace with it. And you do the best you can and know that you're giving your children something that's a little bit more important. Nobody's going to remember
Yep.
your sticky kitchen floor in 20 years, but they're going to remember
Yep.
this experience, and that's more valuable.
Definitely. I think some of the most special family memories I have with my boys were spent around a dirty kitchen table with, a bunch of homeschooling stuff on it, opening up a box of pizza and eating right out of the box of pizza. And we were just
Mhm.
exhilarated about whatever it was that we had just come home from. Maybe it was a football game or we just had international night at school and there was a mess. There was no homemade meal, but it was just, we were high on life, excited to talk about what had just happened. And so it's sometimes those most simple meals around, like I said, a dirty, messy, homeschool, supply-filled house that are just the where memories are really, really made, and it's so special.
Sure.
I couldn't agree with that advice more. Mary Ellen, I want to ask you, as we wrap things up today, to give advice to the mom who's listening thinking, "This is right up my alley. This sounds really fun. The costumes, the set, the production, all of it. I want to do this, but how do I get started?" Can you just give some tips and tricks and advice?
Sure. Yes, one thing we did that was smart, and we did many crazy things. But the one thing we did that was smart was start small, like start low key.
Mhm.
So we started in a backyard with a bench and very
Yeah.
simple costumes. And then as your children get older and you get a little more confident and things feel better, you add in. Every year we added in a little
Mhm.
something. So we added in a small set, and then the set got bigger, and then the costumes got a little more elaborate. And as the children got older, they could help. The props got a little bit more, elaborate, things like that. And play to your strengths. Like I didn't have artistic ability, but I could sew a straight seam, so I'd
Mhm.
help with costumes. I'd scour thrift stores
Mhm.
for props. I would do the feast at the end of the our last production because I love to feed people. So I
So
would
fun.
coordinate all of that.
Yeah.
That was my strength. I couldn't direct the play. I couldn't do the art or anything like that. We have another homeschool mom
Mhm.
here on Long Island who's talented and a professional musician. So her little co-op does a
Mm.
musical every year, and I think they're doing The Wizard of Oz this year. Last year they did The
Mm.
Sound of Music, and like the youngest one was 3 years old. He was a little goat in the lonely goat herd scene. It was cute.
Yeah.
Do play to your strengths. So if Shakespeare isn't your strength,
Mhm.
but music is, or if there's a drama play, or even like the little play Comus, which is, I think it's just 3 short acts with 7 little kids. Start small,
Mhm.
play to your
Yep.
strengths, and add in every year as you go. And don't worry about the sticky kitchen floor. Don't worry if they flub their lines. Don't worry if somebody cries on the stage. I'm sure Laurence Olivier flubbed a line once or twice. So it's all just about the experience and about sharing your love of the material with your children and encouraging them to do their best at something.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Great advice. I just think, like you said, that it is worth the mess or the stress or whatever it may be, because this was such an incredible experience you gave your kids. I can only imagine if I were to be interviewing the adults that got to live this as their childhood, that they would describe it as nothing short of magical. It sounds like it was just the most blessed, beautiful experience. This is really where us homeschoolers shine, is getting to do
Yeah.
these incredible things. And the powerhouse behind these incredible things are moms like you, Mary Ellen. This has been
Oh,
such a great conversation. You've inspired me today. I thank you so much for sharing your son with me and his story. And I am inspired to start something like this myself with my sons. Thank you so much for being here.
oh, you're very welcome. It was a great pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. This isn't the end of the conversation. I want to hear from you. Come say hi on Instagram, connect with me on Facebook, or leave a comment below. I want to know what today's conversation sparked in you. I read and respond to every message. Until next time, remember, you got this.